brings me over to my very special guests for today. It's the wonderful Sam and Mia. Good morning to you both.
G'day, Troy. How are you, mate?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. How are you guys?
Not too bad. The sun is shining in Hobart this morning, so that's always good.
You're joining us from down in Tasmania. I can already see there's some emotion, and I'm gonna apologise in advance if I join you, but I really appreciate you guys joining us today. Have you guys?
Sorry,
It's all good, my man. Is it often that you have you guys talked about this on air before?
No, we've not actually talked about it publicly at all.
Okay.
Maybe we feel it's a slightly safer space being in Geelong that you're airing.
Sure.
Yeah. So, sorry, Sam's probably the more emotional, but he probably holds things in a lot more than me. I'm quite matter of fact, as in the writing that I sent you. I didn't realise that was going to be on Facebook or Instagram, so it was very matter of fact. It wasn't actually as maybe emotional as I would write it if it was more of a just chatting to you kind of narrative.
Just an FYI, I've edited what you've requested edited as well. So yeah, but yeah, how did you guys meet?
At a football function of all places, because football's not my thing.
What were you doing?
Actually, one of my friends said, "Come along, you might actually meet an eligible bachelor." And I just happened there.
Did Sam kick a ton or kick a bag that day, and you thought this guy's the footy star? I hear you do all right on the footy field, Sam.
Look, I wasn't that flash, mate. I had a go. I was one of those blokes that actually had a go on the footy field. Back in the day, I used to have, as you'd obviously mentioned with Fizz, you know, I had a fair bit of hair back in the day. It was like similar to Krusty the Clown. Yeah, and I think we had a 70s night that night at the footy club, and I think I actually asked me to dance.
Oh, classic.
Never been asked to dance before, so,
No.
Never been asked to dance before. Get out.
No, I'd never been asked to dance, and I'd never been asked out for dinner before. So
In
quite
Coolangatta.
traditional. We courted quite traditionally for the first 3 or 4 months, which was, very sweet.
That is so good. That is so good. And where are you guys, Johnny? How did you find yourselves down in Tasmania?
Both born here,
yeah.
born and raised.
Yeah, wonderful.
Quite a few years, 2 years in the mainland, and then had a few months overseas with my brother who was over there for a few years, and then eventually found my way back home, mate. So.
Yeah. And you've got a wonderful family. Are they up and about at the moment?
Yeah, stuck to tablets, otherwise they'd be hanging around just screaming and whinging. So, yeah.
Well, I really appreciate
early morning breakfast time. So, yeah, we've given them the okay for screen time today.
Yeah, I think it's allowed to be pulled out in these kind of moments. So I really appreciate you taking your time. We're talking stillborn and pregnancy and infant loss, and we've had an opportunity to kind of certainly not desensitize, but get a little bit of a warm up about some of the things around it. We spoke to a First Nations Indigenous midwife yesterday, talking about how these situations play out in Indigenous communities. So it was a real eye-opener already. But tell us a little bit about your journey, and I guess back to that time when you first noticed something wasn't going to plan.
Our first pregnancy was very, very normal. There were no issues whatsoever. Albie was born healthy and happy. We actually fell pregnant really quickly after Albie, though. And Joseph was to be due only 2 weeks after Albie's first birthday. So we were going to be very, very busy parents. We were definitely surprised, but we were excited about the prospect. It was at our 20-week scan when something was noticed. The technician asked whether or not I'd been leaking any fluid. I hadn't been. And unfortunately, I had a pretty strong inkling what it was right from the beginning. When she mentioned fluid, my mother had lost 2 babies to renal agenesis. a very long time ago. So my older brother would be about 47 and my younger brother would be 33 or 34 now, I think. No scanning technology back then, so they had no idea until they had their babies, and they were born naturally but also prematurely as well. So I had an inkling at that scan because there was no fluid, and I remember thinking, watching the scan at the time, I said, it's not as clear as Albie's scans were. It wasn't as clear. It was quite fuzzy, and that's because there was no amniotic fluid for the light to bounce off. And yeah, then they had to go off and get the main technician and the urologist, who we worked with every subsequent pregnancy, actually. And yes, it was with further discovery, there was no renal system whatsoever, no kidneys, no bladder, no renal tubes, nothing.
Do you remember that moment that you had? Were you in the room, Sam, through these appointments?
Yeah.
What's it like, man? It's
I think it was more just bewilderment. I mean, why us? It was just sad, mate. And then a lot of thoughts. What have I done? Was it me? Have I done something that could deserve this?
Well, it turned out it was me. So. They were my genes passed on from my mother, which we didn't realise at the time. So my mother had been told, because she had had one with my father and one with my stepfather, she'd been told that it was just a random selection of genes that happened to have created this in both separate pregnancies. So we didn't really have any idea at the time that it was hereditary. But it definitely was something that was mentioned to our obstetrician, but very nonchalantly, like, oh yeah, my mum had, 2 babies with renal agenesis. We didn't actually realise how it's actually like one of the top 10, I think. I can't remember what the causes of infant death, I think. Yes. Yeah.
Put much strain on your relationship? Had you guys been through much prior to something so about you both like this as before? Relationship?
No, this was, yeah.
It sounds like you had a really beautiful relationship. You're courted at the football ground, and you've been travelling, and things are going kind of almost like the happy days. What was going through your relationship at the time, and did it put a strain? Did it challenge you guys in any way?
I think it put a huge amount of strain on it, mate, for the fact that I still felt that me being father sort of figure, husband role, I couldn't break down. I needed to be there for Mia. Obviously, Albie still needed the love and attention a little boy needs. I always thought, it's Mia's time to grieve. She needs to get through that, where I sort of probably bottled it all up, and that probably didn't help things. A lot of, I suppose, being a male, you don't speak to a lot of people. I had my brother, who's very, very close. He was sort of one shoulder to lean on. But I had mates and still have mates that have never ever broached the subject about any of the boys, which I thought, why? Some of my best mates wouldn't even talk to me about it.
I think that illustrates the uncomfortableness, though, around death in general still. So, and especially infant death or any loss during pregnancy. People don't know what to say. People don't want to upset you. People don't want to maybe make you start thinking about it again in case you weren't. Sure. But the truth is, it's always there. It's always in the back of your head. And especially if in our situation, it's been one situation after another. We've now had, 5 losses altogether. And it is a big part now of my brain has changed considerably through the trauma and, my stubbornness as well. It was pretty much me who wanted to keep going. So there was also a lot of guilt. It's so embedded. There's just so many different emotions that are constantly at play with the loss.
Did you have...
So, sorry, Troy, it did put a massive strain on our relationship there. Sort of, so you can't sort of fall apart. So you've still got life. As horrible as this, life goes on, mate. And you've just got to, so.
And I felt that too. We had Albie, and he deserved parents that could provide happiness and experiences for him. So he was definitely our glue for a very long time. And I'm very rational. Even though I can be very emotional, I'm very rational. So the fact that there was a very scientific, genetic reason that it had happened, I was able to process that a little bit better.
Sure.
Not necessarily the trauma, but of giving birth, but just why it had happened. Yeah.
5 times. It's unimaginable. It's really unimaginable. Are you aware now, I guess, of being sadly experienced in this space from different scenarios? I'm sure they all would be very different. What from that first time of being isolated and kind of working out together, have you guys found new or did you discover new ways to find and lean on other supports other than some of those early issues? Some of your friends weren't working out. You guys were strained. Where did you go to when you needed something else to kind of lift you guys through?
I think my release was always footy, Troy. So 2 hours twice a week training, 2 hours on a Saturday. There was just no thought of it. Once that 2 hours a day was just when it first initially happened, it was just always back to that thought. So,
it was an experience that I wouldn't wish on anybody. The exhaustion of the grief was all consuming. Like, there was a period of time where I, after our first loss, where I couldn't even think properly, let alone plan anything. Sometimes speaking was confusing. It was the most exhausted I had ever been, emotionally and physically. And I'm assuming that that's what everyone goes through when they experience grief of losing anyone in any type of traumatic situation. I just had never experienced grief like that myself. I'd had, an elderly grandparent die when I was a lot younger, and I don't think I actually really appreciated what that meant at the time, being so much younger. But it was overwhelming, and my brain was just completely confused and muddled. And there has been, unfortunately, because it happened again and again and again, it did actually, it changed me quite a lot, which is the thing in the end that I felt the saddest about, if that sounds strange. But I lost me for a very long time during the process.
What do you mean by that?
I think she became almost a different person, Troy. When we first met, happy, bubbly. Not saying you still see that as well. There are times when you just think, she's, what I say, not a changed person, but it certainly affected her at times with the happiness there as well. There's no doubt you see, obviously, with the kids, you see that, yep, I can sit back and watch and just say, she's an amazing woman to do what she's done with what we've been through.
Yeah. Is it compounding? What things compound each time? Do you ever have an opportunity in these kind of very unique circumstances, or unique to me anyway, I should say. You know, I don't know anything about pregnancy loss, let alone 5. Quite close together. Looking back now, could have you done anything different in hindsight? Would you suggest just keep pushing through to speak to your younger self, give yourself a break in between having a go? What things compound, or are they separated, or does it just feel like one big chapter? And I mean, I'm sure it's kind of not over in terms of it's not just book closed. Cool, that's done. I'm sure that you guys have changed. You know, you probably see it quite often that you went through it. But anything unique that compounded over those years that you're still kind of chewing through
I
now?
was absolutely obsessed with having a baby, and we did not expect to roll the dice 3 more times after losing our first to renal agenesis, that it would happen again. We had Albie, so it was possible to have a healthy baby.
Sure.
We didn't have any fertility issues whatsoever. We fell pregnant very quickly every time, and I know that there were specialists who were saying, you know, give yourself time, but part of my healing process was to be pregnant again, was to be on that road of being closer to that final destination that we wanted to be at, which was to have another baby. Look, in hindsight, knowing that the gene had it's a selection of genes, it's not just one, so it's not something that can be tested for in an embryonic stage. In hindsight, I don't know that we would have pushed through unless we had 100% guarantee that we were going to have a baby without Bra, which, you know, I mean, the only reason we had Maggie and Bill is because we were offered, you know, eggs. So, yeah.
Yeah, well. Who offered you eggs?
My brother and sister-in-law.
Wow, replay that for us. Put us on that moment where something like that gets offered to you in probably a very emotional moment. Were you guys talking about this to them a little bit? Did they knock on?
No.
Did they not come to you and go, "Hey, look"?
I think we had definitely talked about potentially going down that line. We had looked at all avenues. Actually, we looked at adoption. I went to a few, meetings to learn more about the process, and it is the most convoluted process. It is just ridiculous, considering the amount of children out there that need loving homes. We were going to need to tick a lot of boxes that we didn't actually tick. And we probably should have started that journey in our early 20s before we'd even met. It was going to take so long. And there were only about 5 different Asian countries that Australia actually did adopt to. So that, in the end, became it wasn't an option. Foster care for us was going to be a potential option, but then
foster care, my thought was, if we get a very young child, baby toddler, I didn't want the heartbreak of 2 or 3 years down the track losing that. Yeah, I would say it's my child back to the system, or a parent wanting them back, their biological parent.
So we decided that wasn't
for
us. And yes, we did start talking in general to the family about it being maybe our only option to do egg donor. And so then, of course, it was, do we go with someone we know, or do we go with a stranger? So we were, working out the pros and cons of both of those situations. And then it was then that my brother's 11 years younger, much younger sister-in-law offered.
If any of these questions are too personal, of course, just say pass, please.
Yep.
But I'm curious. Certainly taking advantage of this amazing opportunity you've given us to be able to speak to you. So thanks once again. It's unique to you guys how you want to remember and commemorate or honour part of the healing process, but there's a place for it. There's a place for doing something. There's a lot of talk around, remembering my name and saying their names in some of the marketing around the world right across the world for these people. What ways did you both find to do that?
We had
5 times in a row, for each one.
Well, there's a group of people down here with infant loss. We go into Hobart sort of every 12 months on the date for infant loss. It used to be a releasing of balloons because that wasn't environmentally friendly. So it's now actually putting flowers in the water for everyone. Each family's lost.
COVID's changed that, unfortunately, so it hasn't happened for the past 2 years.
A good thing and if anyone goes through this process, we got handprints of all the boys. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
I generally didn't think I'd be this emotional about it, but
it's all good. If you're a mate of Fizz's, you know how to cry as a man.
yeah. So I've got basically a print of all the boys' hands and when Alfie was born, their feet. It's in a frame in my shed or a man cave out the back, so that hangs on the wall. So that sort of every time I walk in there's a piece of them there. So
we did do something special. They were all actually due, crazily enough, on the 21st of a different month.
Wow.
My cycle must have been absolutely like clockwork.
Wow, yeah.
We actually lost them on either the 7th or the 8th of a month as well. So the 3 births that I had, Sonny and Thomas, for instance, were actually born a day but a year apart on the 7th and the 8th of August. So there are some very significant dates, and I think because there are so many, it's quite overwhelming. And I know that other families have birthday cakes or, that they do celebrate. I think we've kind of let things just flow over. We definitely think about them. We definitely know the days are coming. We've got some amazing family members who remember them every year and just simply send us a love heart on that particular day through a text or something. For the most part, though,
I generally take a couple of days off work. That's just sort of generally do something together. So.
The journey of pregnancy, another thing that I don't know whether I'm thankful or not. I probably wouldn't mind, but anyway, it's not going to happen. Pregnancy, knowing that your child is going to go through some trouble versus you've got beautiful children now. Put into words that journey of, were you confident at any one stage prior to having your children that you've got now after having such a tough journey? Was there matter of fact stuff for you, Mia, to the doctor going, hey, you guys are all clear, start celebrating? Or did you have in your heart just so much, you call that the stubbornness that you've built in? Was that coming and going, I'll tell you now, I'm waiting until I see this baby in my hands before anything I
So with Joseph, something was missed at the 12-week scan. So we should have been alerted to the fact that he didn't have kidneys and a bladder then. Normally at the 12-week scan, the technician does try to locate those organs. They were missed, it wasn't mentioned, and so we then blissfully went through the next 8 weeks unaware that our child actually didn't have a renal system. So in a way, it was kind of nice to have that blissfulness of not knowing. Who knows what we would have done at the 12-week situation had we found out. We may have actually terminated the pregnancy then and there because it is a fatal condition. They cannot live outside the womb for longer than, a few hours a day, a few days, because that amniotic fluid actually helps with functionality of also the respiratory and the digestive system as well, because they are swallowing it and et cetera, et cetera. So, we got an extra 8 weeks with Joseph, and then we had a beautiful little baby that we could give birth to, and he was registered as a birth. We named him. I received maternity leave. When we found out subsequently that at 12 weeks that the babies didn't have kidneys, so obviously the scanning was a little bit more, they were much more particular, and the urologist actually came in every time to deal with us thereafter. We did find out at 12 weeks. We got that diagnosis. We were dreading going in, but we were just hoping so much that this was it. This was it. This was going to be our, miracle baby. This was going to be okay.
And you generally thought, it's always, it won't happen again. Surely it can't happen.
Yeah.
A second time.
In hindsight, I wonder now, though, whether or not, as mentioned to you before, that whether or not I triggered that succession of genes.
Sure. And
then there was just no going back. I don't know. I really don't know. So, my sister had 2 pregnancies and 2 beautiful, happy, healthy girls. So BRA actually affects 2 boys to 1 girl. And we just had boys every single time. So the choice to continue each pregnancy after Joseph, once we found out at 12 weeks, we had it confirmed at 16 weeks. We thought we'd wait just in case they're tiny, just in case. And then we felt we needed to honour each pregnancy the same way we had with Joseph, and that was to continue through, knowing that after 20 weeks I would have to give birth and that our baby wouldn't survive. That was in order to.
Yeah, I had people ask basically, Troy, why did you, when you sort of got the news, why would you keep going? And from our point of view, it was, once again, me got maternity leave because they were registered birth, but gave her time off. You didn't have to go back to work in 2 weeks. She had time with Albie. When we first lost Joseph, I went back to work after 2 weeks.
No, there was no way I could have gone back to work after that.
And I look back now, mate, and think, why? Why did I do that? I don't, because I thought it was the right thing to do.
Yeah,
maybe
sure.
Maybe.
Back at I work with the power company. I'm a linesman. Maybe it was going to take my mind off it. Did it? It did for a few hours at work, but then once work finished, it was just back to that thought. Why did I come back to work so early? Give me one piece of advice. Don't rush back to work. There's plenty of time to go back to work.
Oh, that's right across many situations, isn't it?
Yep.
We talked about it yesterday about sorry business in the Indigenous space and how the whole community just shuts down and everyone just stops and it's a month, rule out a month and they don't do anything official till there's timing and there's processes to go involved. So it's a credit to you guys for making, better decisions. I think, we could all learn from it. We've got some questions come through. The chat line's going quite busy. Everyone's just really reaching out to you, showing a lot of love and support, and thank you for sharing. Some big stuff. There's some tears from some Kylie Latu's over here. I've got a mate over in Germany who's tuning in. Amazing woman indeed. You're unbelievably strong. You too, Sam. It's still a process. We spoke yesterday about the First Nation sensitivities of photos. This is a question from the Fizz. How important are photos of the boys to their memory? It's something that Indigenous people avoid. They don't say their name and stuff like that. How's photos and imagery and even hand casts and things like that?
I find that we had there's a gentleman down here by the name of Steve Lovegrove. He deals with a place called Heartfelt. He basically is a photographer.
Volunteer photographer.
He comes in and actually takes photos for parents like ourselves who've actually lost boys or children.
Babies.
Babies, yes.
Children.
But we've got photos of all the boys. I like regularly sneak up in the back room and sit there, just have a flick through. Yeah. And it's very comforting. We've got friends who've been in a similar situation. They had photos taken, but have never actually looked at them.
And that's their
choice.
Their
But,
way.
for me, it's comforting. It's no different to when all three of our healthy kids were babies. I could sit there for hours just with photos.
I mean, my advice to any parent in this situation, because it is confronting seeing a little baby that is completely formed, but very little, very, very little and thin, and almost transparent. Eyes were still closed. They hadn't completely formed properly and weren't open, but I could see eyelashes. We could see fingernails and toenails.
And on that, Troy, because Joseph survived, he survived for nearly an hour.
Yeah, he was still breathing.
You could see his breasts. That was all with the boys that me had birthed. But
my advice is, even if you're unsure as whether or not you want them as keepsakes for later, is to have them taken. And even if you're not necessarily in the photo, because we have photos holding our babies, we have photos of Albie. I mean, Albie was 9 months the first time, 18 months the second, and almost 2.5, almost 3 the third time, because we miscarried Lucas at 16 weeks. Their memories, and we talk about it a lot at home. But no, sorry, I'm getting back to my advice is take the photos, even if you put them away in an envelope and you never look at them. One day, and it might be not until you're 85, that those memories will never leave you. You don't necessarily need a photo, but you may want to look back at them in time. We don't have a space in the house as such that we, honour the boys in that way. We have a little beautiful sassafras urn that we have all of their ashes in.
That was tough too, Troy. We had to go through the whole process of actually a funeral. We had the boys cremated.
We didn't have a funeral.
Cremated, but
Sure.
once again, that was heartbreaking. Yeah.
And there was the decision at the hospital, what do we do with our baby when we leave? And so I decided that I didn't want my little baby boys lying in a crematorium, and we brought our boys home in little kidney dishes, and we set them up with ice packs in our fridge, and we actually had them for a week. I know that might sound really, really odd and bizarre to other people, but it was the most comforting thing knowing that we still had them with us and we could actually look at them. We made sure they
were on ice.
They were on ice. They kept extraordinarily well. I'm sure that's probably actually really confronting for some people. Sorry, I didn't realise that might be.
I think you're just being really honest, and that's what we expect,
Yeah.
Do you ever wonder about what they would sound like, or
Yeah.
like I think humans tend to do that. Go, they'd be turning 10. I wonder what was planned, or and or does that get cut off quickly because that gets a bit. You think it's a bit joyous for a second. I wonder what they'll be up to right now at 13 playing basketball, and then do you have to cut that off? I would imagine it wouldn't always go well.
Mate. It's all footy here in Tassie.
No, you think about it a lot. I've got a lot of friends who were pregnant at the same time as me,
Right.
and actually Sam's sister was pregnant at subsequent times. So we even have a nephews who are the same age. There are certain times of the year that I do get very upset about not having them here. But in saying that, Maggie and Bill wouldn't be here if we had have had Joseph. We potentially wouldn't have even had Lucas, Thomas and Sonny had we had Joseph, and he had have been a healthy baby. So I
think that's how I look at it too, Troy. Out of the whole heart wrenching situation, I actually spoke to Fizz yesterday and sent him a message about it. If we had the boys, I wouldn't have these two absolutely delightful, adorable two young twins. So that's sort of the silver lining around it, mate. But,
it is, but I have always stuck to, I know we've got them, but if we didn't have them, we wouldn't know them.
Yeah, true,
and
sure.
I would much rather have not experienced any of this trauma, which has strained us, which has ultimately changed my personality. And yeah, I mean, we absolutely love them and we are so thankful that we have them. But in hindsight, I wish that we'd never had to experience any of it.
Of course.
So,
where are you guys at now?
because a lot of people do say those sorts of things to you. Oh, yes, but you've got these now, and
Sure.
as though that's supposed to make it all easier and
Mhm.
kind of just swipe everything else under the carpet, and you don't, or at least you can have babies, or at least you've got Albie, or those kind of comments. So
Where are you guys at now? You talk about, I mean, that's just heavy trauma-related things. How are you guys progressing? You don't have to be too personal, but is there some things that are working for you guys at the moment, and living with your now selves, hopefully seeing a little bit more light.
Sorry, we have a 5-year-old's bottom to wipe on the toilet.
It's so good.
Sam, go and save the day.
That's the answer, right?
Yeah, I've been doing some clinical hypnosis to help with my anxiety and some different behavioural patterns that I kind of acquired in the last 5 or more years, or more than that. In fact, the trauma created a really bad mindset for me, actually. So when the twins came along, it wasn't all happy. It was very difficult for me to settle into being a parent. I was no longer trying to conceive, so I almost felt redundant. I didn't really know what was going on in my life. I'd spent 4 or 5 years doing nothing but doing that, counting my cycle, wanting to pee on sticks, that kind of thing. And then I had twins, and I found parenting very challenging. But the clinical hypnosis has really, really helped for me. Exercise is definitely one of them.
I probably found, mate, that actually chatting to people made life a lot easier for me.
Say that again, sorry.
I pretty much found actually opening up and chatting to people helped me. So when it first happened, I didn't have a lot of people to talk to about it other than my brother. But I'm quite open with it now, I think. Because you can mask it very well. And sometimes if you let people know what you've been through, it does help, mate. And you might be having a bad day, and they can understand, at a certain time of the year. I got no doubt every year since Cross Joseph start, come July, August, my headspace changes a little bit. My mood's probably changed a little bit. If people sort of can understand why that occurs, that sort of puts me at ease, because I feel they understand why I'm a little bit grumpy, and they have some sort of empathy towards me why I'm actually like that at that time of the year. So
you still in touch with your footy club that you played for in Coolangatta?
Yeah, we actually had a reunion. We had it just before the shutdown on the Gold Coast. We had 3 days up there.
Oh, did Fizz go up?
Yeah, he came up. Yeah,
that's
he
right.
He certainly wasn't best on round. No, it was actually good to catch up with. There, sort
Of course.
As I've footy all my life, and that's sort of one thing that actually has helped me through some of the darker times, mate. Because obviously reasonably successful there in Queensland. So it's a bond with people you never lose. So we hadn't seen sort of blokes for 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah, wonderful.
Like you sort of saw each other yesterday, mate. So
Yeah, wonderful.
yeah, it was a good couple of days. Yeah.
It's so good. I better get going. I thank you for coming on this show, and it's just nice to hear a story, even though it might not be all this frills and a current affair and tricks and whistles. It's just a true story, and that's what we love hearing. I really appreciate and thank you for coming on and sharing so honestly and openly. No apologies needed at all from your side. So I hope it's been helpful, but also just from us and behalf of the RGR listeners, we love you guys. We got a strong family here that are very considerate and loving and sensitive. So you've certainly got a family on here, albeit on radio. But really, I appreciate you guys joining and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Troy. Very much appreciate it, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting.
Lovely. Have a brilliant rest of the day, and we'll speak to you soon.
Go the Swans.
Bye bye.
Oh, no. Should have cut him off before that.